Hello everyone, and welcome. Today we will be talking about vaccines, and in particular, their use in the battle against the COVID-19 pandemic that is rapidly spreading the globe. Earlier this year, the coronavirus, or COVID-19, started to spread globally and has now infected almost 6 million people worldwide, with between 300 and 400,000 unfortunately passing away due to this disease. It has significantly affected healthcare systems, which rapidly have become overwhelmed due to an influx of infected patients requiring intensive care. COVID-19 has also affected how we live our day-to-day lives, with quarantining and social distancing measures changing how we interact socially and how we work and sustain ourselves financially. This has led to a high degree of frustration, both at the individual and societal levels, with a high degree of uncertainty about the future. So this begs the question, how is modern biomedical science trying to fight back against this virus? Upon the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, scientists, clinicians, and biotech companies began developing two approaches to combat the COVID-19 virus, which either target the virus directly or which help shield us against the virus. For today's video, we will focus on the shield approach, which consists of the development and implementation of a vaccine. Before I speak any more on vaccine development, I think we should take a step back and try to understand what happens in the body of an infected individual. When a virus enters a human host, it infects a host cell and hijacks the host cell's DNA and protein replication machinery to make hundreds to thousands of copies of the virus. These new viral particles can then go on and infect other cells or be shed and spread to other individuals. Our bodies fight back against viral infections and protect against future infections through the adaptive immune response. First, a virus is ingested by an antigen-presenting cell. This cell digests the virus and presents small fragments of the virus, known as antigens, onto its surface. Immature helper T cells bind these antigens and can enable many immune responses, such as the activation of cytotoxic T cells, which identify and destroy infected cells, and B cells, which act as mini factories, producing antibodies specific to the virus that can block it from infecting other cells. A proportion of these T and B cells go on to become memory cells that patrol the body for months or years. Collectively, they act to provide protection and immunity against future viral infections. However, in the case of viruses like COVID-19, which our immune systems have never encountered before, most people will have little to no protection and immune memory against them, making us sitting ducks for viral infection and illness. This is where vaccines come into play. They effectively act as a way to train our immune systems to recognize the virus and fight back against it. Vaccines can also protect society as a whole. As more and more people get vaccinated, they are protected from becoming infected and therefore spreading this virus. This contains a virus, and this containment is very important for vulnerable groups that are immunocompromised and unable to get vaccinated. Together, this concept is known as herd immunity. There are broadly three different types of vaccines that are being developed to fight against COVID-19. Virus-based vaccines, nucleic acid-based vaccines, and protein-based vaccines. Virus-based vaccines utilize weakened live viruses or chemically inactivated viruses. This form of vaccine is quite common, with the MMR vaccine being a weakened viral vaccine. Viral vaccines are effective but require extensive safety testing and large quantities of virus. Viral vector vaccines use less harmful versions of viruses These viruses are genetically engineered to produce coronavirus proteins to act as antigens. These vaccines are relatively safe as the virus is genetically engineered to not cause disease. Nucleic acid-based vaccines are unique in that they use genetic blueprints in the form of DNA or RNA to instruct cells to produce viral proteins. Cells in the host individual will then produce multiple copies of COVID-19 proteins that act as antigens to train the body's immune response. This type of vaccine is very easy to produce and develop, but they are largely unproven and untested. And finally, protein-based vaccines, which can be split into two types. Protein subunit vaccines, which involve a direct injection of COVID-19-like spike proteins into the body, or the injection of viral-like particles, which mimic the external structure of a coronavirus, but are not infectious themselves. Protein-based approaches are promising, but they have their own caveats. Protein subunit vaccines may require multiple doses or the use of immune-stimulating molecules to work effectively. Viral-like particles can be quite difficult to produce and manufacture. Viral-like particles also have limitations in that they can be quite difficult to produce and manufacture. Around the globe, many groups are working on developing each of these types of vaccines to prime our immune systems and fight back against COVID-19. The majority of these groups are focused on developing either a viral or a protein-based vaccine. There are also a handful of more exotic approaches being undertaken, such as the use of antigen-presenting cells that are trained outside the body and injected back into a patient. The current push towards COVID-19 vaccine development is occurring in North America, with groups in Europe, China, and the rest of Asia not far behind. The majority of these research efforts are being undertaken by the pharmaceutical industry, with minor contributions from academic institutions and non-profit and public sector organizations. The fact that most of the clinical research is being undertaken by the pharmaceutical industry can actually be quite scary and lead to the assumption that COVID-19 will be just another cash cow for big pharma companies. However, to understand why pharmaceutical companies appear to be leading the charge, we have to understand a research tool that is necessary to develop safe and reliable therapies. Clinical trials. The current format of clinical trial design and implementation has existed since the 1940s. It can be broken down into three sequential phases that ensure that a vaccine is safe, effective, and provides immunity against the virus it was designed for. In Phase 1 trials, the goal is to see if a vaccine is safe and what type of immune response it invokes. At this phase, only small groups of individuals are tested. In Phase 2 trials, the goal is to look for the effectiveness of vaccine against either artificial infection or clinical disease. Vaccine safety, side effects, reactogenicity, preparation, optimal dose, and schedule are also tested in a larger cohort of patients. In Phase 3 trials, the goal is to determine the effect of the final vaccine formulation on a large scale. Many hundreds of subjects are recruited across several sites to evaluate the efficacy under natural disease conditions. If the vaccine is deemed safe and effective over a designated period of time, only then is the manufacturer allowed to market the product for human use. The cost of these trials is immense, with costs ranging into the billions of dollars to get an approved drug or vaccine to market. There is also a high degree of financial risk involved, as only about 10% of drugs tested in clinical trials actually succeeding and making it into the clinic. Money at this scale, unfortunately, cannot be mobilized and leveraged by academic institutions. There are currently 12 different vaccines being tested in the clinic, with the majority of the trials being undertaken in China and the United States. However, single trials are also being undertaken in the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. The majority of vaccines in trials are either virus-based or nucleic acid-based. This is interesting, since nucleic acid-based vaccines are largely unproven in humans. Of the vaccines being tested, 2 of the virus-based vaccines have actually already entered Phase 2 clinical trials. This is exciting news, but we are still a long way away from producing a blockbuster vaccine in the amounts required to guarantee a worldwide supply. We can potentially speed up the development and production cycle through changing how research, clinical trials, and the industry operate. We can reallocate more funding to support research that is focused on vaccine development and encourage collaboration among groups from different nations and scientific disciplines, with the hope that these collaborations will stimulate novel solutions. We can also change the guidelines of clinical trials to potentially combine Phase 1 and Phase 2 trials. This is already occurring in some cases. However, this is quite risky because it may have overarching effects and implications for future therapeutic development, leading to potential reductions in effectiveness and safety. And finally, we can change how pharmaceutical industries act when it comes to vaccine manufacturing. Pharmaceutical companies can start the production of vaccines before clinical trials are actually completed. This is already happening with the Serum Institute of India, which is planning to have 1 million doses of vaccines ready for deployment in September of this year. Companies can also collaborate together rather than competing to guarantee a worldwide deployment of a vaccine. And finally, companies should not demand exclusive licenses, as is the current practice prior to developing a potential therapy. Although this will mean less money for the individual company and more risk, it may actually ensure faster and more effective vaccine development. Unfortunately, it looks like the pharmaceutical industry will have the final say and will decide if they are willing to take a major risk to increase the chances of getting a vaccine globally in the future. Thanks for watching our first video. If you like the content, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to our channel. If there are any open questions or comments about COVID-19, leave them in the comments. As always, stay safe and stay healthy.